second. What the hell am I teaching on today? Hold on, let me check my notes. Oh yes, when the world is full of evil, transform all mishaps into the path of wisdom. On that note, let us begin by getting grounded and comfortable. Starting by finding a seat which allows us to express that concept of dignity, which is to say that we sit with a firm sense of groundedness in the legs and hips, the pelvis connecting us, rooting us to the earth, and then from that foundation rising up and off of that base without becoming rigid. We sometimes talk about not making ourselves a target for arrows, which means we don't really tighten and protrude the chest and over-exaggerate the contraction of the back muscles. Instead, we rise up and soften inwards. This creates space for the rib cage to descend into the body and the spine to be strong without being rigid and inflexible. Calling to mind, as we often do, the quote from Dag Hammarskjöld, "The only kind of dignity which is genuine is that which is unmoved by the indifference of others." Shifting the hands to the hip crease for the opening bow, accentuating our dignity with an open heart and a strong back. On an exhalation, inclining the body, regal without cold. And slowly coming up. Winding the legs and connecting the soles of the feet for our first posture, butterfly pose. Creating good openness between the heels and the pelvis so that the knees can relax naturally to whatever level of hip flexibility we have today. And then starting with a long spine, we'll begin to draw ourselves forward, finding ourselves in a forward bend. Both the hips and the spine, head relaxed, and attending to the first of our three questions. Am I here now? Reminding ourselves that we are naturally predisposed to come back into the present moment and be aware of the richness of our present experience. Beginning to feel the quality of the breath in the body, to notice the body. And as we become distracted, eventually coming back and gaining confidence from that return. If you've practiced with us for a bit, then you've become very comfortable with the idea that wandering is a kind of constant tendency that we have to a certain degree or another. So rather than becoming discouraged about our inability to remain focused for extended periods of time, instead we relish the opportunity to return to the present moment. Noting with some satisfaction just the natural tendency of ourselves to want to be present, to be aware of what's going on within us and around us. If you're newer to class, we exit each pose with 3 chimes, and then on the 3rd coming up. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? And slowly beginning to come up. Pausing with the spine upright, the legs still in their butterfly position, and then we unwind the legs and we slide onto our abdomens for Sphinx pose. Choosing Sphinx as our next pose so that we can both compensate the back for the forward bend as well as to begin to activate other parts of the body, other muscular patterns. So starting with the elbows under the shoulders, and then if it's too much for us this morning, then walking the elbows forward. Or if elbows under the shoulders is not enough, we start with the arms straightening, coming towards a baby seal pose. And allowing the head to relax. Can I feel what's going on in my body? Second question. Not to be confused or conflated with, can I fixate what's going on in my body? Meaning, can we choose to feel rather than to think about feeling? And rather than settling on one sensation and really spinning on it, can we continue to expand our awareness of sensation to encompass, eventually, over time, the whole of the body together? Noticing not just the macro sensations where the pose, for example, is activating the body, or where the body is most securely pressing into the floor or the mat, the blanket, but also the micro sensations, the quality, for example, of the palate and the roof of the mouth, the quality of the eyes. We may also choose, as a kind of new aspect of this technique, and notice if there are particular places where we do fixate, where we notice a sensation arising and then we stop the process of feeling and jump into the process of thinking. Are there parts of our bodies that we're just very sensitive to in terms of feeling? And that's where, of course, the third question becomes most relevant. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Flaring the elbow as we slowly come down and allow a moment of rest for the spine. Seal pose almost always generating, for almost everyone, a generous amount of sensation in the low back. So we pause for a moment, allow that to settle. And then when we feel ready to, keeping our heads oriented in their current position, we'll simply roll onto our backs for the twists. As we come onto our backs, feeling free to reorient ourselves on the mat or to adjust our space around us to permit twisting. So we'll take our first twist over to the full wall side, our collective left, by bending the knees and letting the knees begin to drop together as a unit towards the left. And if we find that the spine is sensitive today and that is too much, we lift the top knee away from the bottom. If we need more, the bottom ankle hooks on the outside of the top right leg, giving us a little bit more leverage. And then the right arm can go up overhead, extending the twist all the way up the side of the body. And attending to the third question, can I relax around that sensation? In many cases, this means really just to let go of mental fixation and narrative so that we continue to feel rather than to make permanent or extend a particular sensation by thinking about it. So many wonderful teachings in spiritual traditions, as well as our simple awareness of the world around us, that we can miss on some of the most glorious moments by becoming fixated on something small and insignificant. And in that same way, we can really use our capacity for focus, for connecting and being aware of things, to really minimize the richness of our experience by choosing only one thing on which to focus. So we try to relax that tendency to think about what we're feeling. Think about what's going on in our bodies. And the good news is that this is a lifelong practice, so you don't need to get it right on Sundays at 8 a.m. And the other thing is true is that some days we're better at it than others. would, come back to center. And take a moment to stretch and release your spine. And then bringing the feet once again to the mat, knees bent. We'll now drop the knees over to our collective right. Once again, selecting modification of the posture so that we can feel in the pose but not be overwhelmed by sensation. Choosing, if the shoulder allows, to lift the arm, but feeling completely and totally relaxed and satisfied if that movement isn't possible for us today. Over the last 3 classes, including this one, we've explored a single Lojong slogan. And once again, the Lojong slogans are a teaching from Buddhism, specifically one brought from India to Tibet. The Lojong slogans, Lojong meaning really mind training, tended to really help us on the path of awareness. We've been focused on this phrase, when the world is full of evil, transform all mishaps into the path of wisdom, the path of Bodhi. As with our previous weeks, we will continue to utilize the same meridian lines from traditional Chinese medicine, which are the spleen and stomach channels. The traditional Chinese medicine and meridian lines being one of the 3 pillars, along with Buddhism and the 3 questions. And as we've heard in the past few classes, the spleen and the stomach working together are really in charge of nourishment, both mentally and physically. And the sign of a weakened spleen is really this sense of lethargy and overwhelm. The body feeling very congested and the mind feeling very muddy. So we've progressively worked these spleen and stomach focused areas, which is the inner thigh, top of the shin up through the thigh, and then the more lateral sides of the body, and in the case of the stomach, up into the eye. And so our sequence today will really focus on opening the inner legs into bending the back and opening the side waist and chest. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please, if you would, come back to center, pause and stretch. Taking a moment to stretch and relax the back and to further awaken the body. Then let's come up And we're going to start today in frog pose. Long-time favorites, all of us. So as always, so many ways to do frog, but let's start with the anti-frog. For those who are just boycotting amphibians. And that can be just wide knees, child's pose, so that the knees come wide and the stretch flows through the inner thighs. And we come down like so. So for those of us who are going to stick with this, please assume the wide knees, child's pose. If you're coming into frog pose, as usual, I recommend using the wood floor to slide on if you can or would like to. And the posture ultimately becomes about spreading and opening the legs with the ankles perhaps in line with the knees. So that we're getting a really good and deep stretch between the inner thighs. And we can come down to the forearms if that's comfortable. And we just enjoy. Enjoy frog. Frog being a really wonderful pose to do in a group, because if you get stuck, there's plenty of people to rescue you. If you're trying this at home, just make sure you have an escape plan, including a cell phone or a life alert bracelet nearby. I'm in frog and I can't get out. Settling in. Per our last few classes together, we'll take a moment now to reconnect to our contemplation. And we'll do this in the first two postures. And then there'll be a little bit more extensive teaching today than usual. So the contemplation that we've been working with is the following. We locate a sensation in our bodies. And then we label it. I am feeling something in and we name that body part. The next stage of the contemplation is to then say to ourselves, that sensation arises from, we insert the blank, we insert something into that blank. And I've given as an example, for example, I feel something in my inner thigh, particularly here with frog pose. We might say to ourselves, I feel sensation in my inner thigh. That sensation arises from Stuart. And then you take it a next step. Stuart arises from pure evil. And then from there, and so on. Right? So, staying... Oh, so true, Kim. So the source of all evil. So in this contemplation, attending to the chain of arisings, and where in your own sense of things arise from. So you might say it arises from a tightness in my inner thigh. You might say that tightness arises from, and just keep following it, no matter how interesting or perhaps strange or disconnected things might become in your own sort of sense of things. Go with your gut in the sense of what arises in terms of your mental space. What you think, really just go with it. noticing sensation, labeling from where it arises, and then labeling or querying the cause of that arising. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Finding a way out of this pose goes often by trying to drag one leg back to the center. In other cases, trying to extend the legs back. In other cases, just crying out for help. Frog. Take a moment in frog. Our next pose will be on the abdomen, so you're welcome to, after frog, kind of lay out fully. Take a moment to allow your hips to reconnect with one another. Our next pose will be seal, also known as cobra. So if you're working with any deep concerns for your back, then Sphinx pose is your starting point. But if you'd like to go a little bit deeper into the back bend, then turning the hands out, which helps to open the shoulders, we start to work the arms straight. We can, of course, work the hands back till we have a deep and substantial back bend across the spine. But there's no extra credit for herniating a disc, so don't get crazy here. And relaxing the head and enjoying this stretch, which is sort of quintessential stomach line posture here. Stomach line running up the front of the legs and up through the midpoint of the body and jogging slightly to the lateral line, the outer line of the body, around the pectorals and up the side and through the neck. Again, please, if you can, draw your attention to a feeling arising in the body and noting it. And again, this is a cognitive act, so we are intentionally using our thinking process to identify a space in the body from which feeling arises, and then stating that feeling arises from, and so on backwards. You may find that you exhaust the chain and then you just choose another place. choose to note as you're doing this contemplation, just parts of your sort of chain of rationales that strike you as curious, unexpected. Again, these arising not so much as kind of conscious attempts, but as sort of spontaneous responses to the question. No filter. So in some cases it may feel a little bit comical or out of left field, the answers that come up. Sensation. So please slowly come down. Take a moment here to experience the back out of the pose. And then perhaps taking a counter pose, a new body position that feels appropriate based on your experience of your body. Child's pose, twist, maybe. When you're ready, slowly come up and find a seated position. And we'll come into a lateral dragonfly, and we'll do this the following way. So, starting in a seated posture, we'll take our right heel into our pelvis as if we were doing head to knee pose, with the left foot facing forward. And then, picking ourselves up a bit, we'll shift the left heel more forward so that we turn slightly to face the long edge of our mat. From here, we will take our left hand out along the leg, or perhaps inside of it, beginning by leaning over to the side, stretching and opening sideways. And then only for those who feel that it's necessary to add more pull. Can the arm come overhead? But this gesture can often be very kind of effortful for many of us. So we can also just relax the hand onto the knee. And maybe with a light pressure, just take ourselves over to the side a little bit more with that push of the right hand or the right knee or thigh. Head can relax by either dropping the ear towards its shoulder or the chin towards the right shoulder. Sorry, towards the left shoulder. The sensation here really spreading from the low back up into the side wings. And breathing here in lateral dragonfly. As we hold here in lateral dragonfly, we'll begin to build on the awareness developed in the contemplation. So the contemplation technique is to notice sensation and to notice the source of its arising. And this corresponds to one of the key points of Buddhist wisdom, which is in dependence, things rise up. We may notice that when we have a sensation in our body, that we notice that it arises from a place. And then that arising arises from some other cause, we might say. So you might notice that, for example, that a sensation in your neck arises from the muscles of your neck, and the muscles of your neck generate that sensation because that's where you hold tension. You hold tension there because you spend a lot of time when you're frustrated, tensing the neck and clenching the jaw. You spend a lot of your time frustrated and so on. Or it might be that you experience that same sensation and you've really committed to that SNL skit, Night at the Roxbury, and so just all that neck movement has caused some serious problems for you. Either way, you might say, why do I do that? You might say, because it brings me joy. Point being is that the sensation in our body arises from a source. And we begin to become aware of the fact that we cannot have one thing without the other. You cannot possibly have sensation in your neck without having a muscle there. And you cannot have sensation arising from that muscle without other things. Thich Nhat Hanh, in the book Awakening the Heart, Essential Buddhist Sutras and Commentaries, writes, according to the teaching of dependent co-arising, cause and effect arise together, and everything is a result of multiple causes and conditions. For a table to exist, we need wood, a carpenter, time, skillfulness, and many other causes. And each of these causes needs other causes in order to be. The wood needs the forest, the sunshine, the rain, and so on. Even Kim's appropriate response, that sensation arises from me. Even I have a cause. Parents, bad upbringing, too much sugar. Yet, so we see that, yet you stay, Kim, yet you stay. Every week, what does this say about you? So the point being is that we begin to note that there is no thing that is itself independent, that all things arise from something else, that everything is codependent. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please, if you would, slowly come up out of the posture, and then revolving yourself around to center and switching legs, please. Starting with the head to knee pose shape, Janu Shirshasana, and then sending the right heel more forward until we feel a good stretch in the inner line of the leg, and then adding that side bend here, opening up the whole musculature of the side body here. And again, the arm can come overhead, but if that becomes a source of suffering, we just press down on the left knee with the left hand as we drop the head either right ear to right shoulder or chin to right shoulder. And we breathe in lateral dragonfly pose. So all things arise from something else. And all things are therefore dependent on something else. In a wonderful book entitled What Makes You Not a Buddhist, often helpful to know, by Jonsar Jamyang Khyentse, he writes about this concept of co-arising. And he notes that consider cooking a hen's egg. Without constant change, the cooking of an egg cannot occur. The cooked egg result requires some fundamental causes and conditions. You need an egg, a pot of water, and some sort of heating element. And there are some not so essential conditions. And that egg needs a chicken. And the water needs rain. Heat requires energy or fire, and that fire requires wood. So even the simplest thing as a cooked egg is so dependent upon so many other things that we can say that that egg cannot arise without all of the other things on which it's dependent. And that all things in this world are this way. All things are dependent. And through our exploration of this contemplation, you may have had yourself a glimpse of this codependency. that you yourself are codependent, that the sensation arising in your body is codependent on so many factors that although you may feel on a daily basis that what arises within you is somehow unique and independent, it is in fact deeply dependent upon all circumstances and all phenomena which are around you. So a question would be for you is, what is your reaction to the teaching of codependence? Is it borne out by your own developed experience? Is it something to which you have a strong reaction to? And this is the awareness for the last two postures, which is having spent some time seeing that things arise from innumerable sources and that none is independent of another. What does this teaching of dependence, interdependence mean to you? Where do you land on it? Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? And can I relax around that sensation? Please slowly come up and out. And arranging yourself back at center, please take your legs long and take a moment of rest, perhaps resting back on your hands. And we're going to take an arm posture to stretch and open the upper line of the stomach and spleen channels. We're going to take rack pose. So pleasant. Rack pose. But you're actually in it. So, but the nice thing is that with arm poses all, we spend less time in them. Little point of gratitude. So please begin by bending your knees and taking your arms a slightly generous distance behind you, with the fingertips facing away, so that the thumbs are rotated out towards their respective sides. Begin by lifting the chest, feeling a slight engagement of the upper back. And then, as you're able to, shifting your feet in slightly to facilitate the movement, pick the hips up and shift them forward until you deepen the stretch in the shoulders. At this point, as you shift forward, the focus is less on squeezing your back and more on using that forward movement to kind of capture your spine in a lengthened position. You may straighten the legs, you may keep them bent. You may continue to inch yourself forward until you find a space where you have a sufficient amount of stretch, but you're not implicating the elbow joint extensively in this posture. It's very easy to go so far forward that your elbows become locked, and then you are really feeling quite a bit of difficulty in that joint. And again, attending to not only the arising of sensation and its cause, but also your awareness of this teaching. Is there a space for you where codependence or interdependence ends? And if so, where is that point? Is there a comfort or a discomfort that arises in relationship to interdependence? going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Oftentimes useful to bend the knees and use the feet as a little bit of leverage to push yourself up and back to release your arms, and then releasing the arms, pause, and you may wish to mobilize the shoulder each side. And then please come down to your back. This sounds promising. And if you do not have a block, please raise your hand. Please keep your hands raised. So I will attempt to throw a block directly at it. And for those of you working with a block, we're going to take a posture that we've been working on for a bit, which is that supported back bend. So for the supported back bend, we bend the knees. And placing the feet flat on the floor, we lift the hips up as if we were going to do a Hatha Yoga bridge pose. And we place the block under the hips so that we can hold this posture with no effort in the legs and lower body. Now, I encourage you, just for today, to choose a setting that is lower than the maximal setting, unless you have a good extensive openness in your hips. Because if possible, please extend your legs straight. We're doing this so that we can fully open the quadricep line. And then, if you have glasses, removing them for a moment. And doing nothing more than just taking the heels of the hands to the eyes and covering the eyes for a few breaths. You may choose to rub the eyes gently. This is the ending spot of the stomach channel. And then choosing to either relax the arms by the sides or perhaps taking them overhead, either long or clasping opposite elbows, or even allowing the arms to drop in a kind of cactus or saguaro-like arm next to you. And in this restful, supported posture, please take a moment, if you would, to attend to the arising of thought and sensation in response to the teaching. And the way that this can work is using the 3 questions as a basis. We relax. And then from that spot of relaxation, bringing to mind the teaching that all things are interdependent. Seeing what arises in the body as thought, feeling, and sensation. Differentiating feeling and sensation as sensation being the raw texture of arising from the muscular system, from the nervous system, and feeling being the nuanced response to that sensation. So we feel, for example, pulling inside the muscle, and that might generate a sensation of concern or fear or joy. But continuing to relax your self around those arisings. So repeating a bit of Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching and adding on. For a table to exist, We need wood, carpenter, time, skillfulness, and many other causes. And each of these causes needs other causes in order to be. The wood needs the forest, the sunshine, the rain, and so on. The carpenter needs his parents, breakfast, fresh air, and so on. And each of these things in turn has to be brought about by other conditions. If we continue to look in this way, we'll see that nothing has been left out. Everything in the cosmos has come together to bring us this table. Looking deeply at the sunshine, the leaves of the tree, and the clouds, we can see the table. The one can be seen in the all, and the all can be seen in the one. The one cause is never enough to bring about an effect. A cause must, at the same time, be an effect. And every effect must also be the cause of something else. Cause and effect inter-are. They give rise to each other. The idea of a first or single cause, something that does not itself need a cause, cannot be applied. How does this teaching land in the space of the body? The arising of thought, feeling, and sensation. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Before you begin to move, you are welcome to remain in this posture, as our next pose will be rest. If you find this to be satisfying and restful, then please stay in it. Having taken 5 minutes in the pose, you're welcome to take any more time that you'd like. Or releasing yourself from the supported back bend and instead coming into another restful posture, one that is dictated by your own need. So choosing to rest in any way that is restful. As I often say, letting go of the tyranny of Shavasana, the seemingly untraceable commandment that we must all lie on our backs at the end of yoga. And I encourage you to relax your contemplation and to relax all thinking. Simply resting in a kind of awareness. No technique, no artifice, just resting. from your restful position before moving. Please begin by simply becoming more aware of your body and the space around you. Recognizing that there is, and always has been, the world around you as you've rested, but the sort of aperture of your awareness has been narrowed. So begin to open your senses, your awareness of the input of your senses, to embrace more and more of the space around you. And then from that opening of awareness, eventually feeling a kind of impulse to move the body. And an impulse usually creating additional impulses to move more boldly. And then simply directing that impulse towards movement to slowly and patiently bring you up to seated, taking your time with this transition. And as you arrive, eventually seated, once again assuming a dignified posture. The eyes perhaps closed or lidded slightly. Taking the hands to the thigh crease for the closing bow and pausing with that upright spine. And again, the quality of this seat and this position is regal without being cold or distant. It is open and strong and accepting. Closing class with the aspiration. On the third chime, we bow. May I experience happiness and the root of happiness.